You know what I could never figure out? I'd build something for the porch or the garden, use good wood, seal it up tight, do everything the books tell you to do, and after 2 or 3 wet seasons it would start falling apart. Joints would swell, then shrink, then loosen up until the whole thing felt sloppy. I just accepted it as the cost of outdoor woodworking. Then about 4 years ago, I came across a video of Korean craftsmen restoring a hanok, which is a traditional Korean house, and I watched them pull apart joints that had been sitting through monsoon seasons for over 300 years. No glue, no nails, no modern sealant. And those joints were still tight. Some of them were tighter than the day they were built. That stopped me cold. I spent the next year and a half learning everything I could about how Korean joiners think about wood and water, and today I want to walk you through exactly what they do differently. Plus, stick around to the end, because I picked up a marking technique from a Korean timber framer that completely changed how I lay out joints for outdoor projects. Let me show you what I found. Korean traditional joinery is one of the least talked about woodworking systems in the West, and honestly, that is a shame. These methods were developed specifically to handle some of the most extreme humidity swings anywhere on the planet, and they work. Once you understand the thinking behind them, you start to realize that most of us have been approaching outdoor joinery backwards. So let me start with who these craftsmen are and why their methods deserve your attention. Korea sits in a climate zone that most American woodworkers would consider a nightmare for wood. The Korean peninsula gets hit with a full monsoon season every summer, roughly late June through late August, where humidity regularly climbs above 90% and rainfall can dump 6 or 7 inches in a single week. Then winter comes and the air dries out dramatically, especially in the northern regions where temperatures drop well below 0 Fahrenheit. That means the wood in any structure is going through massive seasonal swings, expanding with moisture in summer and contracting hard in winter, year after year after year. Korean joiners have been building in these conditions for centuries. The hanok tradition goes back over 1,000 years, and some surviving structures date to the 1400s. These are not museum pieces that sat in a controlled environment. These are buildings that stood through typhoons, monsoons, and brutal winters with wood-to-wood connections and nothing else holding them together. The philosophy behind Korean joinery is something I have come to think of as building with the seasons. Where most of us try to seal wood against moisture and lock joints rigid, Korean craftsmen assume the wood is going to move. They expect it. And instead of fighting that movement, they design their joints so that the natural swelling and shrinking actually makes the connection work better over time. When I first heard that idea, I thought it sounded like wishful thinking. But once I saw how it plays out in practice, I realized it is the most intelligent approach to outdoor woodworking I have ever encountered. The first method I want to show you is the one that surprised me most, and it has to do with how Korean joiners use wedges inside their joints. Most of us, when we cut a mortise and tenon for an outdoor project, we aim for a snug fit, maybe add some waterproof glue, and call it done. The Korean approach is fundamentally different. They cut their mortises with a slight internal taper, usually just 1 or 2 degrees off square, and then they shape the tenon to match with a small gap deliberately left at the back of the joint. Then they drive a wedge in from the opposite side, usually made from a harder wood than the main timber. Here is where it gets clever. That wedge is sized so that when the wood is dry, the joint is firm but not fully compressed. When monsoon season hits and the humidity climbs, the tenon swells. As it swells, it presses harder against the wedge and the tapered walls of the mortise. The joint actually gets tighter when it gets wet. Then, in winter, when the wood dries and shrinks, the wedge holds its position and keeps the joint from loosening beyond its dry season baseline. It is a ratcheting effect. Every wet season pushes the joint a little tighter, and the wedge prevents it from backing off. The wood species matters here too. Korean craftsmen traditionally use Korean red pine, which they call sonamu, for the main timbers, and they use a denser wood like chestnut or zelkova for the wedges. The denser wedge wood moves less with humidity changes than the softer pine, which is exactly what makes the ratcheting work. When I tried this in my own shop using eastern white pine for the main timber and white oak for the wedges, I got a very similar effect. After one full summer and winter cycle on my porch, the test joints were noticeably tighter than when I assembled them. The second method is about grain direction, and this is something I had never thought about the way Korean joiners think about it. Most of us orient our grain for strength. We know long grain is stronger than end grain, and we plan our joints accordingly. Korean craftsmen do that too, but they add another layer. They orient their grain based on how water will interact with each face of the joint. In a hanok, every exposed timber surface is oriented so that the grain runs in the direction that sheds water fastest. They look at the growth rings in the end grain and position the board so that the ring pattern encourages water to run off rather than soak in. Flat-sawn faces go where they will see the least direct rain. Quarter-sawn faces go on the exposed surfaces because the vertical grain pattern absorbs less moisture and dries faster. This is not guesswork. Korean timber framers spend a significant amount of time studying each piece of wood before they cut a single joint. They use a marking tool called a myeokjul, which is essentially an ink line similar to a chalk line, but loaded with pine soot ink that does not wash off in rain. They mark every timber with its intended orientation before anything gets cut. I started applying this in my own outdoor projects, just paying closer attention to which face of each board would be exposed to weather, and choosing quarter-sawn orientation for those faces whenever possible. The difference in how those pieces handle rain is noticeable even in the first season. By the way, if you are enjoying learning about these ancient methods, I put together something I think you will really appreciate. It is called Kenji's Workshop, and it is a collection of 100 ancient Eastern woodworking secrets for the modern craftsman. Techniques like the ones we are covering today, and a whole lot more. You can grab your copy by scanning the QR code on screen, or just use the first link in the description. All right, let us keep going. The third method has to do with how Korean craftsmen select and season their wood, and this one really changed how I think about material preparation. Most of us buy kiln-dried lumber and get to work. It is convenient, it is predictable, and for indoor furniture, it works beautifully. But Korean joiners who build for outdoor exposure take a completely different path. Traditionally, Korean red pine is harvested in late autumn or early winter when the sap content is lowest. Then the logs are stored under cover but open to air circulation for a minimum of 2 to 3 years before they are used. Some temple builders I read about would season their timbers for 5 years or longer. The key detail is that they do not kiln dry. They air dry slowly in conditions that are similar to the conditions the finished structure will face. The logic is simple but profound. If you dry wood slowly in the same climate where it will live, the wood reaches a natural equilibrium with that environment. It has already gone through multiple seasonal cycles before you ever cut a joint. By the time you build with it, the wood has settled into its movement range. You know how far it is going to swell and shrink because it has already shown you. When I started letting my outdoor project wood air dry for at least 6 months in my covered shed instead of pulling kiln-dried stock straight from the lumberyard, the difference in joint stability after 1 year was dramatic. The wood had already done most of its initial movement before I ever cut into it. The fourth method is about designing for movement, and this is where the Korean philosophy really comes together. In conventional Western woodworking, we typically try to minimize wood movement. We use quarter-sawn stock, we seal end grain, we apply finish to all surfaces, and we design joints to be as tight and rigid as possible. Korean joiners take the opposite approach in outdoor work. They assume every joint will move, and they design clearances and connection geometry that accommodate that movement gracefully. In a traditional hanok frame, the major beam-to-post connections use a system of interlocking shoulders and through tenons that can shift laterally by as much as 1/8 of an inch without losing structural integrity. This is not slop in the joint, it is engineered tolerance. Each connection has bearing surfaces that maintain contact through the full range of seasonal movement. Think of it like a well-designed drawer that slides smoothly in summer and winter. The fit changes, but the function never fails. One specific detail I found fascinating is that Korean joiners often chamfer the internal edges of their mortises at about 45 degrees, just a small chamfer of maybe 1/16 of an inch. This does two things. It prevents the sharp edge from crushing when the tenon swells against it, and it creates a tiny channel that allows trapped moisture to escape rather than pooling inside the joint. When I started adding that small internal chamfer to my own outdoor mortise and tenon joints, I stopped seeing the hairline cracks that used to develop at the edges of my mortises after the first winter. The fifth method involves surface finishing, and this was probably the simplest thing I learned, but one of the most effective. Korean woodworkers traditionally finish outdoor timber with perilla oil, which comes from the seeds of the perilla plant, a relative of basil that grows all over East Asia. Perilla oil is a drying oil similar to linseed oil, but with some properties that make it better suited for high-moisture environments. It penetrates deep into the wood grain, it does not form a thick surface film that can crack and peel, and it has mild natural resistance to mold and mildew. The traditional application method is to warm the oil gently and apply it liberally to the wood. Let it soak in for about 30 minutes, then wipe off the excess and let it cure for 2 to 3 days. They repeat this process 3 or 4 times. The result is a finish that lets the wood breathe and move while slowing down moisture absorption enough to reduce the speed of seasonal swelling and shrinking. It does not stop the movement, it moderates it, giving the joints more time to adjust gradually rather than swelling fast when the monsoon rains hit. I have not been able to find perilla oil easily here in the States, but I have had very good results using raw tung oil applied the same way, warmed slightly and applied in multiple thin coats with full cure time between each one. The principle is the same. You want a penetrating oil that protects from within without sealing the surface shut. Let me share some patterns I have noticed over the years, things I used to do myself, that this Korean tradition handles completely differently. The first pattern is reaching for waterproof glue as the primary defense against moisture. Most of us do this because it feels like insurance. But what I learned from Korean joinery is that a glue joint in an outdoor setting is only as good as the wood around it. When the wood swells and shrinks, the glue line becomes a stress point because it cannot move. Korean joiners skip the glue entirely and let the wood do the work through mechanical connection and designed movement. The second pattern is sealing every surface as heavily as possible. I used to put 3 or 4 coats of spar urethane on anything going outside. The problem is that film finishes eventually crack, and once moisture gets behind that film, it gets trapped and the wood rots from the inside out. The Korean approach of using a penetrating oil that lets the wood breathe makes far more sense for long-term outdoor exposure. The third pattern is cutting joints as tight as physically possible. I was guilty of this for decades. If I could not get a joint to close with hand pressure alone, I considered it a failure. But Korean joiners deliberately leave room for seasonal movement. A joint that is perfect in your climate-controlled shop in January may be under tremendous stress by August. Designing in a small amount of movement tolerance is not sloppy work. It is smart engineering. The fourth pattern is ignoring grain orientation on outdoor pieces. Most of us think about grain for appearance and strength, but rarely for weather resistance. Once I started choosing which face of each board would be exposed to rain based on ring orientation, the way Korean joiners do, my outdoor projects started holding up noticeably better. The good news is, once you see these patterns for what they are, you can start shifting your approach one project at a time. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. This is a marking technique I picked up from studying Korean timber framers, and it is so simple I felt foolish for never thinking of it. When they lay out a mortise on a timber that will be used outdoors, they mark it with their Myeok-jul ink line as usual, but then they make a second set of marks, offset by about 1/32 of an inch on each side. The inner marks show the final mortise dimension. The outer marks show the maximum swell allowance. They cut to the inner line, but they check their fit against the outer line to make sure the tenon will not bind even at full summer expansion. I started doing this with a simple pencil and a thin washer as a spacer against my marking gauge fence. I set the gauge for my mortise width, mark it, then slide the washer onto the fence and mark again. That gives me two parallel lines about 1/32 apart, and I cut to the inner one. It takes maybe 30 seconds of extra layout time, and it has completely eliminated the binding problem I used to get in my outdoor tenon joints every July and August. Before we wrap up, if today's video taught you something new, imagine having 100 techniques like this at your fingertips. That is exactly what Kenji's workshop is. It is my collection of ancient Eastern woodworking secrets for the modern craftsman, all in one place, with detailed photos and clear instructions. You can get your copy by scanning the QR code on screen or using the link in the description. Thanks for being here. I will see you next time.